I'm going to have to go in and edit this afterwards because I've been talking. I assume you can hear me now, right? So please let us know if you can hear me now.
We forgot. Test.
Oh,
True.
that's true.
True. Test. True. Hello, Gary. Test. True. True. True.
I assume that you can hear us now. Please let us know. Oh no. Seriously? No? No audio? Still? You should hear it
Yeah,
now.
maybe Gary's gone.
Is Gary gone now? Oh gosh. We lost Gary. Ah, okay, we got the audio. Okay, excellent. We're good.
Thanks, Gary.
There is a delay. So what we're seeing is a bit of a delay on YouTube. So yeah, if we say anything really outrageous, they want to be able to cut our stream. Okay, so I have a cat trying to get up here again. We got all these dogs in our way. So okay, so I was telling a story about why I'm not on Facebook anymore. Facebook's had its issues for a very long time. I've seen my place there recently as waking people up to what Facebook is doing, putting facts out there that I think are not spread on Facebook, and particularly in my circles, unfortunately, very often.
Yeah, well,
sometimes obviously there's value. I've been, loving to see stuff from friends, what their families are up to, what they're up to. There's some good stuff too, but at a certain point you have to cut the ties. And there were two things that happened this week that just made me think, okay, I'm done, and who knows what the algorithm is doing too, right? You just want to get away from that algorithm. But one of them was that they decided that the John Campbell is his name? Dr. Campbell.
Call him Dr. Campbell.
Dr. Campbell.
Yeah.
First of all, he had a video, I shared it, and then Facebook support gave me a message notifying me that it was missing context according to independent fact checkers.
Mm-hmm.
And they thereby made it very hard for people to even get to the video and decide for themselves. So that was one. The other thing is that I was having a discussion with somebody who supposedly was a friend, and I was laying out my understanding of the situation as regards vaccines in children, the COVID vaccine in children, which to me makes no sense for the vast majority of kids, at least. I'm not a doctor. Go research for yourself. But
this is in no way meant as medical advice.
Yes, never. But for me, when I look at all the information available to me, I think that the risk-benefit analysis, given that we know very little about the long-term effects of the vaccine, that you're just not going to put that intervention in there based on what we know about how COVID plays out in healthy kids.
And so this is another instance of the illogical logic. We called it Soviet logic the other time.
Right. So I just
leading inevitably to more and more of the same that has no foundation in, maybe 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, we were hoping vaccination would have a certain effect. But as you learn, you are under the the logical obligation of correcting your knowledge or your insight accordingly.
Sure,
and so that is something that hasn't happened.
No. And so all I was doing was basically posting, here's my thinking as regards the issue of whether children should get this COVID vaccine. And I said, based on my understanding, that I didn't see why people would be excited about this vaccine for healthy kids. And then, maybe you'd be very excited if you had a child who was compromised in some way,
Sure.
and you thought it would be good for them. But this idea of, we're going to vaccinate all the kids and it's going to be a game changer for the trajectory of COVID and et cetera. No, but then I certainly didn't see mandating this for
which is a whole different argument still. Sure. Right?
Yes.
but as it is being forced upon everybody, it is very relevant. So you have to address the one also with an eye on the other, because if the medical argument for vaccinating kids would have validity, then of course the argument for mandating everybody would seem at least less tenuous. Of course, in this situation, bad arguments are piled upon other bad arguments, and this is another analogy we use. It's like, you know, this old, very old house where all the ad hoc repairs are, you know, schlepped one on top of the other until in the end you have this crazy construction, which makes no sense whatsoever. The only sense it does seem to make is as Soviet logic does, people, you know, they give up. They give up. It's no longer logical, and maybe they'll smirk in private, and maybe they'll even, you know, make a tentative comment here or there, but they'll give up, and
people get resigned,
and that's what happened in the Soviet Union.
So to finish the story, I put this out there, and then I say, well, am I missing something about whether it makes sense to be excited about the vaccines in kids? And then I get this whole thing about the fact that there's a context of the fact that this is all due to socialized medicine or government intervention in medicine, and that if I'm not speaking about that primarily or featuring that in some way, and it came out through the long discussion of back and forth that I was being accused of offering pure outrage, which of course is ridiculous, because I was offering an argument. I didn't even, I just said, what is the excitement about this? I don't see it. So anyway, that was, you know, saying, okay, that I'm offering only pure outrage. Obviously, these are not people that I connect with anymore. And I just said, that's it, I'm done, you know. And again, this has been building up for a long time. This is not the only reason I would leave Facebook. This is a straw where you just say the value versus the unpleasantness that you have by being on that platform was just gone for me.
Yeah, so, but of course,
between that and you can't even get the information out from someone as good as Dr. Campbell, right? It's ridiculous.
But also because he's a very modest commentator. He modest in a good sense. He doesn't make claims that he does not see supported by evidence. He cannot possibly be labeled as an anti-vaxxer or you know, let alone an anti-science guy. So that also was why this whole warning by Facebook, you know, it's a dire sign, because how narrow is the discourse being allowed from here and after. And I think it's ridiculous not to well, for that matter, not to be outraged. And of course, you've had a similar discussion also with, you know, with unspecified people, because you're very much in the front line of this battle, because and we can talk about that as well.
Sure. I mean, you know, so this got me thinking, right? The pure outrage comment, which I took as patently ridiculous, got me thinking in a number of different directions. And one of them was, you know, is it somehow bad to be on the concrete front line of a particular battle that impacts values that you personally care about a lot, right? And so then I was thinking about all of the different times that I have actually taken action, gone out there and done something, maybe shown up at a demonstration, mailed a bunch of stuff off to legislators, whatever. And I go back to at least the 90s when I took that speech from Leonard Peikoff, Healthcare is Not a Right, which is an excellent speech. Find it online. Healthcare is Not a Right. That was from 93. There were pamphlets made. I wrote my own letter, cover letter. I mailed that pamphlet, a copy of that pamphlet, to every single member of the House and the Senate back in the 90s. I went and wrote an amicus brief to try to keep one boy, Elian Gonzalez, here in the United States. I went to Florida twice. I'd never been in Florida in my life. I go there and I do these things. I have written letters for to the editor about Robert Downey Jr. going to be thrown in drug hell. This is all just stuff where, you know, because there's so many, but this is the point, right? There's so many places where government is doing outrageous things, and there is plenty of work to be done. And there is, I think, good work to be done, good connecting with other people who themselves also want to resist total government control. When you get involved at that concrete level and explain a little bit of the truth as you see it about the injustice with respect to that concrete issue.
Sure. But I think, well, first of all, you're being too defensive, because there's no need to.
Well, that's the defensive, and then I've got all kinds of.
Okay. So that's one thing, and the other thing is this. You know, any type of activism, and really, it starts with debate, right? With discussing things, and I think if you don't share values plus observations with, you know, your interlocutor, you're not going to get anywhere. And so what you were told basically is this this really rationalist phantasma. Let me finish. Let me finish.
But I don't want to psychologize, you know. I don't want to psychologize and say, oh, well, he's a rationalist, therefore.
No. I'm not saying, no. I'm sorry, but this is my philosophical take. Because if somehow, okay, but so somehow, so do I. Okay. So if somehow you outrage.
Wait, that's my challenge.
We want your bets. We want your bets. 2-1. No. So, if your assumption is that somehow the only proper debate to be had is at the level of higher abstraction, where you should theoretically be able to convince people, you're missing so much. You're missing you're missing you know, the very basis of what debating means, because without sharing observation and value,
these things you can point to in the world.
Things you can point out is one, but also presuppose, say, you're being look at those look at the data among the vaccinated. So if the other guy does acknowledge the data, you know, do not support certain government mandates, but you know, couldn't care less, then of course you don't have a basis. So you need both. And of course, in this case, the quote unquote argument was all the more outrageous, because if indeed this is a perfect instance of the result of socialized, or the principles of socialized healthcare impacting on, you know, more concrete issues, what better occasion is there than to engage in it and show how faulty the reasoning is, for one. So faulty, in fact, that all sorts of fact checkers are mustered everywhere. All sorts of indirect,
trolls on Twitter. We'll talk about the trolls in a bit,
indirect censorship being applied, etc. So it's so full. To point out, yeah, well, perhaps it is because of a certain underlying philosophy that this is left unchecked. So
right.
yeah, so that's my idea.
So one of the things is that I think this person fundamentally disagrees with me about the form that some of these evils have taken in recent years, even more starkly. So you could talk about at first that the fault is government intervention in medicine, and that, you know, this is going to be socialism and socialism is bad. But as Benjamin and I have been talking about with respect to the crony care issue broadly, which, you know, impacts the vaccine stuff, but also issues of censorship and everything, it's like, you know, it's this nexus. We believe that there is fascism in the country right now. And so that, for instance, Big Pharma, when it releases something that is being coaxed and subsidized and who knows what by government, that you are naturally skeptical of that treatment or whatever it is that's being pushed. You know, again, one of the reasons that I took the vaccine was we've got, you know, Greg Abbott here in Texas saying it's always voluntary, right? You know, when you feel like, okay, this is not being pushed on you by government, then you're going to naturally be less skeptical. If it's being pushed on you, a medical treatment, it's not the, you know, province of government to do this, being pushed on you, you're going to be much more skeptical. You're going to want to look, you're going to want to get the facts. But in any event, also being skeptical of Facebook, of calling what Facebook and other big platforms are doing right now, calling that censorship. There's people who disagree with me on that. So they would say, well, you're missing that this is all socialism and that the real people to blame are really government. And that basically, you know, so I'm looked at as a critic of science. I'm looked at as a critic of private business, right? I'm looked at all these things because people share, or people have a very different understanding of how this vaccine came about than I do. So there's that. But let's go to the pure outrage thing, right? Because, you know, again, this gentleman and I share very different premises. And so when he came at me with this thing about you're arguing the wrong way against the wrong people, you're outraged, but it's the pure outrage thing that also got me thinking. So I have a challenge for you. I have a challenge for everybody who's watching right now. Right now, just pure outrage. Express pure outrage. Pure outrage. Go, just do it.
She didn't prepare me for this, huh?
Yeah. So I ask you, if I ask you to just express pure outrage right now, could you do it? Pure outrage.
Oh,
there can't be any mental content of anything that's being expressed or conveyed. It just has to be pure outrage. Is there such a thing?
It doesn't really mean anything. Pure outrage. I mean, it's a put down, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, but it's not even a put down in the sense that it's impossible, right? Pure outrage is actually impossible.
Well, there must have been something
because of something, right? There's something there. Now, a lot of people, you know, one of the contexts, and I'll talk about trolls in a minute, is that I've been looking at sample pages of trolling content on Parler. Okay. And I've also,
and she's laughing the whole time.
Well, sometimes I'm laughing. There's some funny stuff sometimes, but you know, sometimes it really, there isn't very much content except for the outrage. So it's, you know, F so-and-so, and, you know, it uses some kind of racial slur or whatever. So there's very little in terms of content, but a number of times you see these people, yeah, they're, using the wrong language I would never use, whatever. And that takes away from the, contribution it makes to an argument. But I can see a lot of times what these people are mad about, right? So I can see that there's a true source of the anger, the so-called hate, that people are expressing in these things. And, but something else that's interesting is I've been a victim of a bit of trolling on Twitter. I dared to reply to a tweet of Dave Rubin with something that was less than total enthusiasm about vaccines. And the trolls are incredible there. They're just coming in, and a lot of them are just expressing these ad hominem smears or just nasty things. But they come out of the woodwork, and it's really interesting. It's these accounts that have no following, and they've been around, a lot of them, for a long time, and somebody is mobilizing all these accounts to go in and swarm and just try to overwhelm people who express anything that contradicts the narrative on these vaccines. So that was interesting too. But so with the trolling,
talk about outrage, right?
Yeah. Now those people, you don't get a sense of what it is, because they're phone. These are phony trolls, right? These are front accounts that are just meant to harass you. But when I see the outrage that I see on Parler, these, and it doesn't matter, what it is that they're expressing, you can tell that they're outraged about something, right? So there's no pure outrage. And another error that you could make in this realm is where you go full emotivism. Emotivism is something I stuck there in the title. What is emotivism? Those of you who are recovering philosophy academics like I am may have heard about A.J. Ayer, who had this theory about ethics, and he called it emotivism, or actually maybe other people call it emotivism. Some people also call it boo yay ethics. And the reason that they do is that if I say you are
boo,
yeah, you are unethical in some way,
yay,
yeah, you are a bad person, I'm saying boo Benjamin, right? And if I say that I admire a certain person, then all I'm doing is really saying yay. I'm just expressing an emotion, boo or yay. Now, of course, that is false too, because any emotion that we have is based on some intellectual content in there. So if I go back to my interlocutor on Facebook, again, I don't want to psychologize. I've got my own psychological issues. I'll figure out my own psychological issues. Thank you very much. But the thing I can tell you is this, right? That somehow he is not connecting with the things that I am outraged about, right?
Yeah, okay.
He is not connecting. No, just wait. So that could be because he evaluates the situation differently. He thinks that it's just government and only government, that we don't have any blameworthiness on the parts of the corporations because those are private, right? So there's that. It could be also that he happens to think that the vaccines are good. So how could you be so outraged about this vaccine being mandated when generally it's good, and this is just one more thing that government intervention is giving you, and the blah blah blah, right?
But that's such a concrete bound argument. I mean, it's ridiculous, and I think you're being generous. And listen, I earned my place on this stool to psychologize the hell out of him. I mean, I'm the recovered son of a psychoanalyst, so zippity doo dah. So I'm going to tell you, yes, it's actually an ideal cover that people of certain persuasion apply, because if you imagine the only argument that you'll ever make is the proper argument, which is the argument that you'll never have, and of course you can see this phenomenon occurring in that movement with the endless splits between groups that not only accuse each other of holding the wrong opinion, but by implication, they're being immoral, of course, because by holding the wrong opinion, they necessarily are evaders and therefore immoral. I think it's, it's like a rationalist trap, because you can be very safe with your presumed moral superiority without ever having to risk something concretely. And that is where, of course, the point of the value comes in. So what do you care for? Is this a world you feel is worth fighting for? Or maybe, you've given up. You've given up any emotional investment in it.
Right.
So you've reached this, this stage of stoic superiority where, I don't care. It's not anything
Well,
worth.
and so even if it's not that, even if it's not that, right? Even if it's not that, you've got to have enough empathy, open-mindedness. We'll call it maybe different things. To realize that everybody has different values that they are passionate about, that in a day and age where government is coming at us and impacting our lives from so many different angles, that somebody who chooses this particular insertion point and goes in there and fights like hell is somebody to be sympathized with. Not to share values criticized with. From above on some. It's just so tone deaf and out of touch. And
I agree with all that.
So I found it quite rude, obviously. So I'm outraged more at that than no, but I'm serious, because
I knew it.
No, but I'm thinking about this again. I've been doing all these things for years. I've been fighting all the, and then I did the brief, right? I wrote the brief in United States versus Facebook. And maybe if you judge the success of a brief by how many high-priced lawyers had to read it and respond to it, I did pretty damn good, right?
Yeah, you hit the bingo.
But, and that's how I got to Parler. So, I go out there and I do these things because I feel like I have to. These things are impacting my values, and I'm going to go in there and make the best argument I could. Now, suppose he came in and he said, well, I think your argument could have been more powerful if you added some of this, or you did that, or I sympathize.
Yeah, or even,
but it was none of that. It was like your
worry,
argument is pure outrage. Go on, peon, or something.
I worry more about this or that. I think we should convey the worry even in a different way.
And that was, back in the thread when I was still, having an exchange. I said, if you think that, then go ahead and add it into your argument, right? And sure, bringing a little bit of, this is a long, context, and that this is just the latest in this whole chain of government intervention in the ways, but it has shape-shifted into fascism, and some people don't realize it. And sometimes you're going to be in the mode of trying to, at first, just wake people up to the illogic of the particular thing that's going on. That there isn't a logical reason to be excited about giving this vaccine to the majority of healthy kids, that there's certainly no reason to be thinking of mandating it. Our federal government should not be pushing it.
So that's all I was trying to say. It's right? Like the prestige, right? I remember that term. It's
prestige jargon?
From magicians. It's not sleight of hand, but you pull, maybe somebody watching remembers the professional term for you get the audience to focus on something else. And people who are absorbed with the the new technology of this mRNA vaccine, which is not really a vaccine. They are so absorbed. Misdirection. I knew I could count on you, Josh. So they're so, enamored with technology and quote unquote science, exactly, that they are no longer concerned with, banal discourses about human rights individual rights. And that is really bizarre because
I'll give the error theory of this, right? So they believe that we should think that there's unadulterated science being offered, unadulterated, the best that science has to offer being offered to us in this vaccine, right? They are not suspicious of the crony fascist origins of this particular vaccine. Because, for me, I think, okay, this is great. mRNA technology, it sounds potentially very promising. It sounds potentially
and it
promising.
has sounded promising for, for quite some time. And so they never managed to extract a viable product. So of course, a reasonable question is it really successful now with everything we know about transmission among
this time, which is, is it good enough at this application at this time such that government should be subsidizing it, engaging in secret deals about it, pushing it on everybody, mandating it, pushing it for kids? And my best guess, based on everything I know, is no. So
no. But again, there are specific categories of people who may want to even get a booster shot, but that is not the same as saying that everybody should get it.
Bree in the chat is talking about the Surgeon General. And the Surgeon General, I did not really even know who the Surgeon General was until this week, but I saw the little HHS guide to avoiding spreading misinformation about COVID on the internet. So of course, that was another thing that was in the background for me this week. But so in general, there seems to be this problem of people not connecting at the level of the values. Some people, again, maybe they are tuned out. They've kind of gone into a mode of shrug.
And sort of given up.
Yeah. But I think, two things: that when things get so bad that the government is forcing medical treatments on people, and kids in particular, they've got the longest life to live and the longest time to potentially suffer from these forced medical treatments. So that's huge. So they're forcing medical treatments on people, and they are censoring. Yes, there is censorship going on in our country, and we have people in big corporations who are aiding in the cause of that censorship. When these are both going on, then this is a time to fight. It's not a time to sit back and say, oh, well, we can never do this until philosophy wins in the culture. Now, I could see doing that if there were a Galt's Gulch to go to. So if I had a Galt's, if you say, look, no, just bear with me for a second, and then you can be disgusted.
I'm bearing for more than a second.
If you could sit back and say, this is not going to affect me or anything I value, I can sit back and watch it all collapse. And then, just like Atlas Shrugged style, if it's going to collapse, then you can come back and rejoin.
Okay.
Right? I mean, there's a certain context in which you can do that a little bit today, but you can't. There's certain things that seem like you're not going to be able to escape them, and you have to fight them. That's all.
Yeah, but you answered your own question, because if you don't share concrete values with somebody like that, then obviously you have you're not going anywhere together. And I may squeeze in a reference to the supposed 30% of non-compliers as Professor De Smet described them. So that is really very interesting, that people you may have thought were very far removed from you politically, they turn out to share more values with you. I mean, if I listen to Russell Brand these days,
Mhm.
and I thought he was terrible a couple of years ago, but now he's somebody who clearly formulates his support for individual integrity. So how hard is that? How hard is that? So with him, I share something about I share a value and a vision on how society, how the world could be better. And I think that's really something that is a lot more important to focus on right now, because what if we are angry, etc., etc., what are we fighting for?
Well, and go back and cite Rand if you want, but Rand talked about free speech being the fulcrum. That if you actually lost freedom of expression, which is what we are doing today, then you're going to have a big problem. Imagine this, and I'm going to answer. There's 2 comments here in the chat having to do with the kids' vaccines, and I'll talk about my view a bit more in a minute. Imagine you're Matthew McConaughey, and in a way, this is a good lead up because it has to do with the kids' vaccines. So Matthew McConaughey said, "Hey, I was vaccinated, and I guess he thinks the vaccine's fine, but when he looks at the information with respect to the vaccine in kids, it doesn't make sense," he says, for him to vaccinate his kids right away with this COVID vaccine. He wants to wait. That is what he expresses. That's all he expresses, right? He doesn't say, "Oh, this is genocidal campaign by Bill Gates and the what do you call them, the Illuminati, or I don't know, who this week he's right." No, he's none of this, right? None of this conspiracy stuff at all. All he says is that he wants to wait and see before he vaccinates his kids because it doesn't seem to add up for him. That's all he says. The Surgeon General of the United States goes out and attacks him publicly for that. Okay. The other snippet that just came to my mind has to do with the ongoing court battle against the OSHA vaccine mandates that Biden administration is trying to push through. You may know now, there was great news dropped late yesterday. We've now got the Fifth Circuit upholding the block of those mandates. So those mandates are now blocked. First, it had been blocked at the district court level, and then now we've got a 3-judge panel of the Fifth Circuit who just said this is a huge overreach in terms of statutory authority, certainly unconstitutional, et cetera. And so that is blocked right now. You've got the Biden administration saying, "Oh, regardless of what the courts are saying, you guys should go ahead and obey the mandates. You should just keep going ahead." That is dictatorship, right?
Yeah.
When you've got the Surgeon General telling an actor, expressing a mild opinion, a reasonable opinion, when you got him, he's on air, and Surgeon General's got plenty of audience if he wants it. He's attacking this individual actor for the expression of his own thought about this. Then you've got, they're trying to push this mandate through. Judges, our system of checks and balances, are saying, "No, you don't have the authority to do this." And they're saying, "Obey it anyway." This is dictatorship speak. This is dictatorship speak, and it has to be resisted. And yeah, I'm outraged, but I'm outraged for a good reason. Let me answer the thing about the child vaccine. So I've got Bonnie and then also Ken saying, if these vaccines are good. Now, I'm open to the idea that these vaccines might be good for certain people at least, okay? The data I don't think is very good out there, unfortunately.
No.
We're getting enough data to think that there's probably some benefit for some people with these vaccines, okay? Sure. So I'll start with that premise. And I personally hope right now at this exact moment that there is some benefit, because I have a friend who, like me, was Moderna vaccinated, a friend who I care about very much, who is usually here and couldn't be here to watch the show today because she is trying to get better from COVID. And so I am hoping that the Moderna vaccination, which she got after we did, so hers were fresher, she got double vaccinated like we did. I hope it's going to do her some good. Okay, so I'm on team vax for some people at least. But with respect to the kids, okay, the kids have much stronger immune systems than we do. And we've seen plenty of examples of younger people with strong immune systems overreacting to the one size fits all dosages that are being injected into people. We have also seen, unfortunately, there seems to be this weird quirk in the protocol that people can't seem to, infer that inject into the muscle, inject intramuscularly, also means that you should do the standard thing that you're supposed to do, which is try to aspirate before you inject. And potentially some of the injuries due to the vaccinations are because of mistakes and injecting that stuff straight into the bloodstream. So there's that.
So
there's the
that's
Virginia
a point.
pharmacy.
That's a point you can insert here to this question, because since people are not supposed to talk about vaccination injuries, it is highly doubtful anybody has any dependable statistics about this. So if we don't count, we don't know.
In Virginia, at one pharmacy, they injected 112 kids between the ages of 5 and 11 with the adult dose of this vaccine.
Okay, so
and to me,
obviously an error.
Well, right. And there's the standard saying, and I say this to myself all the time, if you try to rush something, you're more likely to make a mistake. They are so eager to push this out. And some of the pharmacies have seen this as a cash cow, that they are not being as careful as I would want people to be when they're dosing this in kids, for sure.
Yeah, but the same applies, this is the practical level, the same applies at the epistemological level. If you're so misdirected at believing something is, this holy end goal, which is universal vaccination,
right.
Something like that, you're not going to pay attention to anything that contradicts this. And that, of course, ironically or tragically, is an environment in which errors are much more likely, because you suspend your critical faculties.
So Ken, and I'm not sure if I understand him here, he says the immune system argument is weak because if it has a 1% death rate, that means almost all of us have adequate immune response. Yeah, okay, so I think I understand what you're saying. I think what you're saying is that the risk benefit probably doesn't work for a lot of people, because most people, now, there is of course the issue, Ken, though, of mere survival versus, how well are you going to do? So, again, I'm open to the argument that for people who have a weak enough immune system, and our immune system has many components. If you have a weak enough immune system such that you're likely, if you get infected with COVID, to have a huge amount of this spike protein come into your system and need to be fought, then it might be good to prime your system with some of that spike protein, this mRNA way or a different way, to get your body ready for that battle. I could see it, right? But for kids, I don't see it. Chris Masterjohn did an excellent conversation with Rob Wolf recently. You'll find it under Rob Wolf's Salty Talks, Rob Wolf, ROBBWOLF.com. The discussion between them was on a variety of topics, but one of them where they did a bit of a deep dive was vaccines for kids, this vaccine for kids versus adults. And the thought was that for most kids, the spike protein is never going to make it into the system to the extent that it does when you inject it straight in. And that there's no good reason to be doing that to kids, because again, this is my kind of putting the pieces together too. We're told by the experts this virus is endemic. If it's indeed endemic, then these kids who are healthy now are going to be exposed to it every year, as their immune systems are naturally waning. Okay. And so as the immune system naturally wanes, a little bit of this is going to get into their systems, and it's going to be exactly the right amount that their systems can take on and develop immunity to, right?
Well, exactly.
Nature.
And so you were talking about outrage, and so that's a point where I feel the outrage really starting to boil up inside me, because we're let's say barely recovering from the whole opioid crisis, which of course, it hasn't been resolved. But if you think about the shameless pushing of highly addictive painkillers, and how there's a system in place that basically proposes a very similar type of dependency. It's clear where I'm headed at.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the every 6 months for life kind of thing, or
well, and even more if you start with children, because you're going to render their natural immunity dependent on this type of aid, whether regardless of how effective it is. You're going to take a time-tested system which works marvelously for most, right. And you're going to make them dependent on a lifelong subscription.
Yeah. So now we've got, I can't pronounce that because it's got so many. When our objectivists going to recognize that the clot shot is the clot shot? Now, first of all, objectivism is a philosophy. So some objectivists, I don't even know if any objectivists would just call it a clot shot. I don't know that it's exactly a clot shot. It certainly does tend to cause clots in a lot of people, and that is one of the side effects that every individual should be able to evaluate with their doctor, their own individual doctor, who is not being constrained, not being threatened with consequences if they dare deliver advice or treatments or push back or try to prescribe something that isn't approved or any of this crap, right?
So my answer to would be this, really, which I think is a more painful question. When will certain people acknowledge that this whole mass vaccination idea is collectivist at the base, and that the supposed holy grail of private healthcare has apparently been thrown out with the trash now, because isn't it supposed to be
but they do,
the liberty of the patient, or the potential patient in consultation with his own or her own doctor to figure out what the best approach would be to any health challenge.
See, but they would say this, and then they would say then they would say it's the natural consequence of the march towards socialized medicine.
So we shouldn't protest because it's part of the deal.
Well, but unless you're protesting socialized medicine as such every single time that you point out the inconsistencies with the things about the vaccines or this or whatever.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that, because they're gonna convince a hell of a lot of people not.
Well, and that's the thing. So the thing is to meet people where their values are really. Because there are plenty of people.
So here's my perspective. If in such a flagrant situation as this, you don't manage to convince people, at least make clear to people that these dictatorial situations is exactly where the principle leads to. If you don't even manage to demonstrate that, then you're just, you know, a little fly on the wall. It means that you are, to all practical effects, a rationalist, because you're just talking about ideas that have no impact on life. And you know, I'm more of an inductive thinker. I like to think. So you find the data around you, and you can explain to people where certain principles lead to.
Yeah. Okay. So here's an integration that just came to me.
Oh dear.
No. Well, so, you know, and I'm not. Well, I'm not going to talk about any of this. So with Rand, she used to talk about ideas having this truck-like reality for you, that basically you would see that this idea in practice would result in some very important value to you being threatened, right? And so she saw it that way. She couldn't just wait. She couldn't imagine, I know, she couldn't imagine that other people didn't see things the way that she did. So that when she talked about socialized medicine, just in the abstract, that, you know, it brought up things like this, right? Now, she was always outraged. And so there's some sort of disconnect among some of these people, where a lot of the arguments that she did always brought in this abstract level, which I think for her was already automatically connected to these things. And, you know, for me, at least, I find that, I mean, two things, right? One is that I'm going to start the argument at this level and connect, right? We do connect it to the more abstract level differently than this particular person too. And we have to recognize that, because you and I, again, we subscribe to the model that there is fascism going on. You know, in Europe, socialism may have gone straight to socialized medicine. In America, government intervention in the economy has gone more along the fascist route. I'm going to psychologize the politicians and everybody else about on the political level. And that is that it's gone this way because it allows people to pretend that it's still a free market, right? So, you know, Obamacare is still a free market, and this is still a free, you know, oh, I believe in capitalism, but we're just going to do this little constraint here. It is garbage. What we have now is fascism, and the people at the highest levels who have the ability to influence things away from this direction, to resist government intervention, to tell the truth, the people who have the power and the influence who don't exercise it, in my view, are just as blameworthy as the government bureaucrats that they're supposedly fighting or whatever. You know, Mark Zuckerberg has the power to turn this in a different direction, and he chooses not to. Some experts who are called upon to appear on television all the time have an audience that they could use to fight against mandates, to talk about the fact that some of this resulted from crony deals and et cetera, and they choose not to. So every person who is, you know, a private individual or a private company,
we all
who doesn't do whatever is in their, you know, ability,
we all
to
have
resist this
we all have a
direction,
responsibility to speak out. And you know, if you look at the artists and athletes in certain cases who do speak out, you know, praise to them, because they got a lot of slack, a lot of trolling as a result. And yeah, so many people in certain positions are afraid, because they're afraid to lose their positions. But yeah,
but what is your position worth if we're going to just have a fascist dictatorship?
No,
that's what I want to know.
Of course.
And,
so
and
so
again, you know, where are we? We're at a place where it's forced medical treatments and censorship about the actual consequences of these forced medical treatments. That is where we are right now.
Yeah,
And it should be fought in
yeah.
the strongest possible way by anybody who has the power to do it. And
And-
kudos to those people who are, right? You know, you've got state attorney generals,
Sure.
checks and balances, top
Okay.
cover.
Yeah.
You've got the Daily Wire among other private businesses fighting it.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
so here's, of course, the next thing, because at some point, even with all the means at their disposal, they will not be able to call this a medical emergency any longer, but there will be another narrative, and you know, they're further working on this this other narrative in Scotland now, in Glasgow. So if you don't stand up against the means used to push these measures through and to push, you know, compliance through, there's nothing you'll be able to do when there are going to be measures in the context of the supposed climate emergency, and you won't have any means of protest left.
Yeah, no, that's definitely coming.
And it's rather similar, because you have the arguments of the settled science of
No, here he says, how can you effectively fight the mandates if you've taken it yourself? Unless I'm going to drop dead from the vaccine tomorrow, of course, I can still effectively fight the mandates. And in fact, I think a lot of the people who are fighting the mandates from a perspective of having had the vaccine and, you know, having, you know, again, I got the vaccine when I thought it was going to be more effective, when it was going to help me and help out the cause more than it actually did. So, you know, if you say, I'm not necessarily against the vaccines, but I'm against the mandates, that you think there's enough questions about these, and of course, the emergency.
No, but I don't think that's really the point, because so I'm not religious. Does that mean that I would support some atheist mandates? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no.
So you know, our freedom of conscience and our right to protect and to safeguard our bodily integrity is essential. And if we only support a principle in defense of people we agree with, it's good night.
No,
You can say good night, everybody.
Oh, how can you fight the mandates with conviction if you
Well, I think I just told you.
Yeah, so Ken, I am a person who is always making the best decision I can given the information in front of me at the time. And so at the time when I chose to take this vaccine, there was different information at my disposal than there is now. I was told that the vaccines were never going to be mandatory. I was told that they were more effective and less dangerous than I think they are now. As it stands right now, I may be fighting a bit of an autoimmunity flare, in part because of the vaccine, but you know, I don't think it's something that I'm not going to be able to sort out completely. So thankfully, I'm in a decent place, and you know, yeah. But I want to fight mandating this for anybody. They're mandating it for people who have strong natural immunity after having recovered from COVID, and that they've got the I mean, so there's, and of course for the kids, like I said, I explained why the situation is different for kids than for adults. I am definitely able to do this. But let me tell you one last thought that had occurred to me with respect to the so-called pure outrage accusation. And it's this, right? One of the things that Benjamin and I see us trying to do is help to empower and encourage both the 30% that Desmet talked about. Again, go back to the interview with Matthias Desmet that we did when we first rebooted the show several weeks ago. He talked about the fact that there's 30% of the people who are like us, who are willing to speak out against this creeping totalitarianism. They're ready to resist. And I'm going to talk to you in a second about some people who are actively doing things about it and that we should, I think, join. The second is the so-called 40%, which he said they don't really believe the narrative, but they are not feeling empowered enough, strong enough, willing yet to speak out against it. And one thing that you can do, if you are just continuing to point out the facts and point out the logical contradictions in the particular measures that are being forced upon people now, that you can wake those people up, right? So I believe that there is a value in saying, yeah, you know, there's all this huge context. I mean, I was joking, you could go back and I could say, but, you know, Mr. Interlocutor, this is really all about conflict between the metaphysical and the man-made. They're really screwed up about the difference between the metaphysical and the man-made. So really the only effective argument can be done at that level, right? And just go reductio ad absurdum on them. But, you know, right here and right now, you can point the logical contradictions out to people. You can have them start to think, this is not good, and I wonder what gave rise to it. And then you continue the conversation and you start to talk about what got us here. And again, the actual full road of what got us here, I see it a little bit differently than other people do, but I'm going to explain it the very best that I can. And yes, it has to do with government getting involved in sectors in the economy, or any, you know, in the economy as such, that it shouldn't be doing. And we can have that conversation as well. But here I am, I'm meeting people at this value where we disagree. We all see that there is a crucial value that is at risk, and we all want to fight it. And I am at the point where we're not just having an intellectual argument, we're also engaging in this process of waking people up that Desmet talks about. And part of that is simply pointing out the logical contradictions and the fact that this is coming down from a dangerous authority.
Right? Well, and showing that you're not intimidated, really, because a lot of the an important reason why people do not speak out is because, you know, they're afraid of being ostracized. They're afraid
Some people
of
are afraid of losing their jobs,
being ridiculed and all that, because, you know, the innuendo is ready. You're an anti-vaxxer, or you're
anti-science,
you're a conspiracy theorist, etc. So all of it is set up and or is ready. So if you let yourself be intimidated, sure, it will be that much harder for the next guy too. And I don't know, you know, trust your own judgment, and give yourself the credit too. And so maybe that's my return to the initial argument, you know, of sharing observation and values. So if you apply to yourself, trust your own judgment and love yourself, because it's impossible to accept this narrow tunnel as everything you're expected to consider, as it is prepared for you through, and I hate saying it, mainstream media, but there are just few exceptions with media that do share information that asks any questions.
I'm telling you, so everybody who doesn't want to use Google, they go to DuckDuckGo. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of people.
Yeah, sure.
I go on to DuckDuckGo trying to find something that I know exists because I've seen it. I try to search for it, and you can't find it even on DuckDuckGo. Now, DuckDuckGo is supposedly good for privacy, but in terms of you think you're going to be able to find the information that you want about this, it is not that good. I
So,
want to, we have to finish.
Give a shout out.
Yeah, we have to finish, but I'm going to give a shout out. Here's some people who are of the 30%. And as far as I know, and again, these are the 30% of the people who see the big problem. They see totalitarianism clamping down on people, and they are willing to speak out and take action and resist.
And they're inviting everyone to join,
Yes.
and they state explicitly that it's not about political affiliation, but it's about,
which it's not,
about
right?
your as much as our fundamental rights.
Yeah. So where you need to go if you want to find out about this is going to be a demonstration around the world. Find the local one near you. This is on November 20th. So it's a week from today. It's called Worldwide Rally for Freedom. And
So,
the URL is worldwidedemonstration.com.
so www.worldwidedemonstration.com.
That's right.
Sorry.
And if you can't find that, be patient, because I was finding that I couldn't get that site to load. And I think it's just because it's been overloaded with so much traffic, which, you know, between that site being overloaded with traffic and the Fifth Circuit citing strongly against the Biden mandates, I am very heartened today about the future of this movement. But so if you go to these sites, you will see they talk about, they say, we are taking a stand. We are taking a stand for 5 important freedoms. And you tell me if these are not worth getting behind. The very first one is not, you know, being free of a vaccine mandate or whatever. It's freedom of speech. And again, without freedom of speech, if we cannot speak out and persuade other people, then we cannot fight for the society we're in. So freedom of speech, freedom of movement is number 2, freedom of choice, number 3, freedom of assembly, which, you know, under some of the lockdowns has not been allowed, and number 5, freedom of health. Freedom of health.
Yeah.
And no one can be guaranteed health, but the freedom to pursue what in your best judgment would result in health for you is how I interpret this and how I would always argue for it. So
your own health, your own choices, hopefully in consultation with a good doctor. And so here's my perspective, which would be my wrap up. This actually, you know, as worrisome as everything is, and I see Sharm al-Fadr agrees about the stuff going on being evil, and so I agree, and I'm worried. At the same time, I think this is an excellent opportunity for us all to learn, to observe what happens, what makes people tune out certain faculties, at least from, you know, from our perspective, why the docility becomes so attractive, etc. And of course, Professor De Smet has excellent explanations for all this. But I sincerely believe we can get out of this a lot stronger and much more aware of
so many things
and of so many values. And so I think that is something that personally I'd like to focus on.
So again, you pronounce it because you're better at than I am. SHR, right? Okay. I can't pronounce it. Sorry. If you want to make a handle on YouTube that I can pronounce better, I will pronounce it. Okay. It says, Amy, do you think the mandates will be forced through, or will the court stop it? I do not know, but I do think that getting involved in speaking out and demonstrations between now and the time that the court hears this can have an effect in pushing it towards the court stopping it. I actually cannot imagine Supreme Court allowing these mandates. And, you know, again, the Fifth Circuit 3-judge panel, unanimous, but they are all conservative appointees. So that's what some people will point to. The Biden administration may think that they've got the Supreme Court in their pocket. They may actually be behind the scenes doing something to ensure they have the Supreme Court in their pocket. That's where my mind goes at this time. I am hoping not. And I would be hoping that regardless of what the Biden administration thinks it's going to pressure the Supreme Court with, that they will stand on this hill and not give it up, because
Okay.
it's super important. Anyway, so that's what I think. I think we share enough in common with this movement that it is worth getting involved in those demonstrations, that it is a good way to go out and actually meet the 30% who aren't necessarily in your particular philosophical, religious, whatever camp, but who realize that these values
share
are important.
values.
Yeah,
Yeah.
share these values.
Yeah.
The other thing is, come to Parler. Parler, we have no Gulch, but in terms of free speech on the internet, you can share information on Parler that you can't share freely anywhere else. There is no throttling, there's no censorship of any kind. I know this because I'm there and I'm in charge of the content moderation.
Okay, so with this,
Okay. Oh, and the cat has now climbed onto the desk itself, so I think it's time to stop. She's lost her patience. Yeah.
so be safe, be happy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Again, we have reasons to be optimistic, and let's go ahead and continue the momentum. Thanks, everybody. And we'll talk to you next week. Let me figure out how to end this with the cat interrupting.